You are not the main character in anyone else's story. Let that sink in for a second. While you're busy worrying about that awkward thing you said at the meeting yesterday, the rest of the world is busy starring in their own movie, where you're just an extra in the background, maybe even a blurry one. The brutal truth? Most people are far too preoccupied with their own performances to be critiquing yours. We like to think we're these logical, rational creatures. We make pros and cons lists, we plan, we analyze, but then emotion walks in, kicks over the rational brain's carefully built Lego castle and sets it on fire. And we're left making decisions based on what feels right in the moment, not what actually is right. The good news is, understanding the hidden scripts that run our behavior is like getting the cheat codes to being a human. So let's pull back the curtain on a few brutal and honestly a little bit annoying psychology facts that explain why we do the things we do. Chapter 1. The ego trumps logic, also known as the backfire effect. Let's be honest, have you ever been in an argument where the other person presented you with cold, hard, undeniable facts that completely contradicted your position? And what did you do? Did you gracefully go, "Ah, my mistake. Thank you for enlightening me"? Of course not. You probably dug your heels in even further. This isn't you being a terrible person. This is a classic psychological phenomenon. When our core beliefs are directly challenged by facts, our brain doesn't process it as an information update. It processes it as a threat to our identity, our intelligence, our ego. So your brain's defense system kicks in. It starts scrambling for any counter-argument, any little piece of data, no matter how flimsy, to protect your worldview. The more evidence you're shown, the more creative your excuses become. It's why debunking a conspiracy theorist with pure logic rarely works. You're not fighting facts, you're fighting an identity. See? Being right just feels better than finding out what's actually true. That's why changing someone's mind starts with making them feel safe, not smarter. Chapter 2. Your brain is a lazy statistician. Quick question. Which is more likely to kill you? A shark attack or falling airplane parts? If you said shark attack, congratulations. Your brain just got tricked by the news. You are statistically about 30 times more likely to be killed by falling airplane parts than a shark. So why does the shark feel so much more likely? Because you can vividly picture it. You've seen Jaws. You've seen news reports with dramatic music. Your brain, in its laziness, uses a simple shortcut. If you can easily recall an example of something, it must be common. This is the availability heuristic. It's why we overestimate the likelihood of dramatic, sensationalized events like terrorism or violent crime, and underestimate the boring silent killers like heart disease or diabetes. Your brain is taking the path of least resistance, grabbing the flashiest, most emotionally charged memory off the mental shelf and calling it a day. Your perception of risk is based more on how easily you can picture a disaster than on its actual probability. And this mental shortcut for danger has a sneaky cousin that influences what we believe, because your brain uses the same easy-to-recall rule, not just for threats, but for truth itself. Chapter 3. You conflate familiarity with truth. Ever heard a piece of gossip so many times that you just started to assume there must be some truth to it? Or seen a meme quote attributed to Albert Einstein so often you never bothered to check if he actually said it? Spoiler, he probably didn't. This is the illusory truth effect in action. The more we're exposed to a statement, the more likely we are to believe it's true. Our brains mistake the feeling of familiarity for the feeling of fact. Repetition is a cognitive shortcut for credibility. This is the engine behind propaganda, marketing jingles, and why that one uncle's factually dubious rant at Thanksgiving dinner starts to sound almost reasonable by the third time he says it. Your brain's motto is basically, well, I've heard this before, so it must be legit. It's a terrifyingly efficient way to get manipulated. A lie doesn't have to be clever to be believed. It just has to be repeated. And this constant exposure to ideas we recognize directly fuels our next brutal fact. Chapter 4. You're hardwired to see patterns. even when they don't exist. You see a face in a power outlet. You hear a hidden message when a record is played backward. You're convinced that wearing your lucky socks is the reason your presentation went well. This is called apophenia, the human tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. For our ancient ancestors, this was a survival superpower. Assuming the rustle in the grass was a predator, even if it was just the wind, kept you alive. The cost of being wrong was low. The cost of missing a pattern could be death. But in the modern world, this wiring leads us to draw conclusions based on coincidence. We remember the 2 times we dreamed about something and it happened, and forget the 1,000 times it didn't. We create narratives to explain random events because our brains desperately crave a world that makes sense, even if it's a fictional one. Your brain would rather invent a cause than accept a random, chaotic universe. And this deep-seated need for a coherent story is the secret force behind one of our most common anxieties. Chapter 5, Your mistakes are invisible to everyone else. Remember that tiny coffee stain on your shirt you were paranoid about all day? I can guarantee you nobody else noticed, or if they did, they forgot about it 3 seconds later. The spotlight effect is the psychological phenomenon where we drastically overestimate how much others notice and judge our appearance and behavior. We walk around with a hyper-awareness of our own flaw, convinced there's a spotlight on us. But everyone else is the main character of their movie, too busy worrying about their own coffee stain, their own awkward pause, their own perceived failure. That presentation you thought you bombed? The audience was mostly thinking about what they were having for lunch. That joke that didn't land, it was forgotten faster than you can say cringe. We are our own harshest, most attentive critics. And the rest of the world is largely just the audience that got distracted checking their phone. The crushing weight of social anxiety is often just the weight of a spotlight you're holding on yourself in a theater where almost everyone else is asleep. So what's the through line here? From the ego that fights facts to the brain that believes familiar lies and invents patterns where none exist, it all points to one thing. The human mind is not a flawless logic machine. It's a magnificent, messy, and deeply subjective storyteller. It's constantly taking shortcuts, protecting our ego, and shaping a reality that feels safe and coherent. Even if it's not entirely accurate, the power isn't in fighting these instincts, but in recognizing them. When you feel yourself digging your heels in, ask, am I protecting my ego or pursuing the truth? When you're gripped by a fear, ask, is this likely or is it just easy to picture? The goal isn't to become a perfectly rational robot. It's to become a better editor of the stories your brain is telling you, to notice the shortcuts, question the narratives, and grant yourself a little grace. Because if everyone else is too busy worrying about their own performance to notice your flubbed lines, you might as well relax and enjoy the show. If this made you rethink a few things about how people, including you, tick, then you know what to do. Subscribe for more real-world psychology minus the textbook fluff. Thanks for watching.